Welcome to another edition of One Door at a Time, Concentric Educational Solutions podcast, where we bring guests to talk about education, their educational journey, and how they're servicing the students that we teach every single day. Today, I have an unbelievable guest, Dr. Barber Mullen from Rush-Henrietta Schools outside of Rochester. It's an amazing opportunity, amazing place that I've seen, amazing just culture that she has brought there in such a short period of time. My sister from Zeta Phi Beta, I just want to thank you so much. Shout out to the Zeta, shout out to the Newps, all the Divine Nine. Yes, I mean even including the Iotas. No shots though. Barbara, thank you so much for showing up. Thank you for being not just a guest, but a sister in such a short period of time. It's amazing that we only met less than 6 months ago. And your authenticity, your transparency, your vulnerability, just thank you. You know what I mean? And thank you for what you do. So tell us, talk about your journey. And what's interesting, like I said before, we're live from NABSE. Your dad is here. And that's a cool, smooth dude, doctor.
Yes.
Right? So talk about your journey, your upbringing. How did you get to where you are now and why?
Absolutely. So yes, my dad is here, and it is no secret. Everyone that I've come across, I introduce them. I say, this is my dad. I want you to meet my dad. Because I believe in connection.
Yes.
I believe in connection, relationships, finding synapses and syncopicity and all of that in between the different parts, right? Mm-hmm. I think about a particular civil rights trailblazer who I absolutely, Willie Taplin Barrow from Chicago, who I absolutely love. And she would say, we're not so much ununited as we are disconnected. And so
I like that.
So she talks about not that we don't have unity, but that we're just disconnected, right?
Okay.
So people always say, oh, you are not unified. The community, Black community is not unified. But it really is more about, are we connected intentionally?
I love that distinction.
And so that really says a lot about not only my leadership style, but how I was raised.
Okay.
And I was raised with a lot of civil rights influence because of my father. My father was an African-American studies professor from Berkeley. He was a higher ed first. Oh yeah, he's got a story. And he was a college president eventually. And now he retired, but he went back to teach world geography and world history in Dr. LaTanya Goffney's district, who is the president of NABSE.
Yes.
So he's here to support her and support me. But he is a trailblazer, and he's the reason why I believe in connecting each other. I believe that, generations have something to learn from each other. So I love that he's with 14 and 15-year-olds talking about world history. Who better than a person that's lived it? And he gets to see the world through my eyes, right, as a millennial CEO of a district. And so much of my education journey was just going through, meeting people. NABSE's like a reunion.
Oh, yes,
so
absolutely.
Every other second, you're screaming and hugging somebody and kissing somebody in the hallway. Because they're all a part of your journey to get here. And that's how I lead. Yeah.
So because he was a professor at Berkeley, right? African American Studies. So my master's was in African American Studies at Temple. It's amazing what that brings out in you, particularly at Berkeley at that time. I can imagine when he was teaching, it was a just such thought-provoking and innovation, idealism about it. How did that influence you in what you're doing now?
So one key thing that I will say, so we ain't got to say how old people are.
Yeah.
I'm a 80s baby and a 90s kid, right?
Okay.
And so at that time in California, the state we were living at the time, Proposition 209 was on the ballot.
Yes.
And that was on the ballot to actually eliminate affirmative action in the state of California. And I was 12 years old, and my dad was like, I'm gonna pull you out of school, and we're taking a bus to all the Black kids in the town, which was not too dissimilar from the district I teach in. Okay. In terms of demographic, he said, we're all getting on a bus, and you're gonna go up to the state capital, Sacramento, and we're gonna march on Proposition 209. Okay. And that is just that's burned in the back of my mind in terms of activism. He made us watch Eyes on the Prize, made us watch Sankofa, just so many different artifacts of our learning. When I was 8 years old, he made me go and recite Nikki Giovanni poems and learn Langston Hughes poems. And just so many different pieces of our history that I learned that is the hallmark of who I am. I don't go around saying I know Nikki Giovanni poems or I know Langston Hughes poems, but it is a part of my DNA.
And I'm thinking about it now. It makes sense now. I'm starting to connect the dots. You were literally born around leadership, right? Like particularly with your father being a college professor, African American studies background.
Oh, and I didn't tell you, my mother was a special ed director.
Oh yeah. So you were born and bred for leadership, right? So talk about like now your journey. So you started in what, teaching?
Actually, I started in public relations.
So how, from public relations to superintendency, how did that happen?
So I started in public relations. My degree was in mass comm. My first job was at BET in LA. I worked under the beautiful, talented, amazing Tasha Whitten-Griggs, who was vice president for TV One at some point. She now works in Hollywood, and she's still my mentor. I just texted her the other day. But she taught me about taking responsibility for things that matter. And no matter what field or industry you're in, it's about coaching up people, taking responsibility for the things that matter, and being a problem finder, not necessarily a person who has all the answers. And so I left the industry because I didn't really want to live in LA. It wasn't my vibe. Went back to Chicago and got into, consumer goods. That wasn't really my vibe. I didn't like that either. And I came from these amazing educators who always made me think about purpose, right? So you could be passionate about something, but it needs to align to your purpose. As you could tell, I love to communicate. I'm passionate about speaking, talking, connecting verbally, orally with people. But it didn't align to my purpose. And so my dad was like, well, you can go sub. So I went to go sub. But I felt a pull to special education because my mom.
So you subbed?
I subbed in Chicago Public Schools. But before I even really got good into the sub pool, I went into an alternative pathway because they needed special ed teachers. So I started teaching special education.
Yeah, keep going. Yo, this is the live from NABSE.
Here we go. So I started teaching, and I was in the classroom for 5 years. And my principal from my second year teaching it. So she gets to see me as the superintendent. And I was literally a special ed teacher pregnant in her classroom, waddling up and down the hallways. And now she sees me as a superintendent, and it's full circle. And she met my daddy. It's beautiful.
So from that journey, from a completely different industry to now, then you go sub, then you go into special ed teacher.
Then I became just the progression, the district leader.
How the hell to superintendent?
Good question. So I could name drop almost everybody here today has been a part of this journey. And I won't, because it's too many people. Right? People see me and they're like, oh, Barber, you know everybody. And I say that's because I don't leave a person. Everybody can sow into you. Everybody can build you. Now you got to be careful. But if you're hungry and you really want to do what's right for kids, you're going to be seeking knowledge. So on my journey, I was always curious about what's the next opportunity. How can we be doing this differently? That took me from Chicago to Seattle Public Schools, for which my girlfriend Keisha, who's a now superintendent at St. Louis, I learned a lot from her while we were in Seattle.
So you've really traversed the whole United States.
Yes, Houston Public Schools. That's how I met LaTanya. That's how I know Dana from Bessemer. That's me and Mark have that connection because we worked in HISD.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yes. So there's a lot of people who literally I learned from them along the way. And what I will also say is Dr. Granita Lathan, she's not here, but she used to be the interim superintendent at HISD. And she was the first Black woman cabinet leader that I ever met. So she was the CAO at HISD when I was there as a district officer or district leader. And she literally said, be your authentic self. So
we were talking about the growing up in leadership.
Yes.
How did growing up around leadership really affect your leadership now? Because most superintendents don't have that experience.
No, and there's things about leadership. People say, great leaders are either born or made. And I think,
Do you believe that?
No. I think you can learn to be a good leader because you still have to learn who you are. You have to learn about yourself. And honestly, growing up around leadership, much of my leadership journey is less about learning about leadership and more about learning about myself. You got to know who you are as a leader, especially as a superintendent, right? You have to be very self-aware. I love Dr. Leslie Fenwick from previous dean of school at Howard. She said leadership is pressurized, right? What is in you will come out of you when you're squeezed. It squeezes you. And so if you don't know what's in you, if you're not aware of what you are made of in an inopportune time, in a board meeting, out in public, on the news, somebody gonna say something to you crazy, wrong, and you're gonna take it personally, or you're gonna react in a way that you can't afford to in the seat. And so I think it really is, or somebody's going to proposition you, you're going to compromise your integrity, right? You're still going to lose the scene. You're not going to be able to do what you need to do for children. So really growing up around leadership was less about, oh, I learned how to manage a board because my dad was president, or I learned how to, manage a budget because my mom was a special ed director. It was more about seeing how they responded and reacted when they were faced with adversity. And it's hard.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And so what my advantage was seeing people who I came from do that. So then believing I could do it too, but then also learning the strategies of self-care, learning how to make connections, to build a community of folks who support you. All money ain't good money. So learning when to say no to opportunities.
Facts.
So really growing up around leadership was less about, I learned the discrete tactical way to be a leader, and I learned about the adaptive skills of leadership. And more importantly, I learned about who I was because I saw two people who I came from leading in a very high impact way.
So now you're prepping for, so you decided to be a superintendent.
Yes.
You're prepping, or you get approached about a superintendency. What was that process like for you?
Oh gosh, it was very, very rigorous. So I did, because I'm a Black woman and we have imposter syndrome sometimes. I did about 4 superintendent prep programs.
Oh wow, okay.
In addition to my doctorate, right? Like I finished the doctorate and was like, great. But then I just was like, I need this, I need this, I need this. But I would say, interestingly enough, I was in the search process last year, this time. And when I came to NABSE 50, right, we're at the 51st, I came to NABSE 50, and I literally just had a group of mentors who I said, look, I'm in this process. I need help. I need to make sure that what I'm thinking is the right thing. And they just wrapped their arms around me because it is rigorous.
So now you're in the process, you're interviewing.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Was it what you were expecting?
Absolutely.
It was.
I was prepared for it.
Okay.
And the reason being is because of the amalgamation of relationships that I had and made, right? Being a student of the job, not a student of, I don't know what you think the job is or what I was very hungry, very curious. There is not a question I didn't ask sitting superintendents, actual board members already. I asked a lot of board members questions like, what do you look for in a superintendent? What do you ask for someone? What's the interview process like? And so when I sat down in front of a group of 7 people and they asked me those questions, there was not a question they asked me that I was not ready to answer at least 3 different ways.
Okay.
So I don't say that to be haughty. I say that to say that, there is a depth of knowledge that you have to bring to the role to get in the seat. And it actually is not how to do the job. That's what a lot of people don't understand, is that I could get in front of a group of 7 people. A board is made up of community members who are not educators. Correct. So I don't need to get up and talk about pedagogy and data-driven decision-making and, Danielson rubric and teacher practice and the questioning and discourse and all these other things. I need to talk about how I represent the community, how I listen, and how I'm an extension of the board, right? And their service. So I felt prepared to do that because I really I wanted to make an impact, and I knew getting into this seat, that is how I would do it, and I needed to be a student of the job.
So now coming up on 1 year in the seat, right? And congratulations on that.
Thank you.
What part, if any, was what you didn't expect?
Yes. So,
because I asked Sean that, and he said, damn, there were things I didn't expect as a superintendent. So I think there are things I did not expect as a superintendent. One of the things that I think is hard for me and I did not anticipate was, I love people, right? I'm a people person. Hey, how you doing? I believe in authentic leadership too, right? So what you see is what you get, and what I say, and I like to joke. I use humor as to disarm people and to bring people in. I did not anticipate how much weight my words had as a superintendent. I've never been a superintendent. So when I'm making a joke, people think I'm serious. When I'm, when I'm messing, ribbing with people, just like to build community and the way we do Jones, right, with folks, people kind of look because they don't know, and they're like, she's a superintendent, she's the CEO. So she says, so it goes. And I have to really be mindful of the words I say, and I have to be mindful. There are times I talk a lot less now, which is hard for me because I like to talk.
but I talk a lot less. I'm a really great listener and a skilled listener, but I had to get even better at that.
I like that. No, I'm thinking about some practical, because I'm trying to take something from each guest, right?
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Well, someone told me, and I believe it, is that listening is the price you pay for giving advice. So you can't give somebody advice. You can't coach them, give them answers, whatever, if you haven't listened. If you haven't really understood the problem that a person has. And sometimes people's problem is just that they want to be heard.
Absolutely.
So you might solve something for them just by allowing them to talk, allowing them to make their feelings known and put them out in the world.
Absolutely.
And so I really underestimated, one, the amount of my words.
Yes.
And I underestimated the strength of them. Because I don't lead with an iron fist. I don't lead with, so what I say goes. And I'm very clear when it does need to be that case. But I use that far and in between. And so I was not ready and I was not prepared for the amount of weight it carried. And so I'm very judicious with what I say now. And
that's what kind of you've learned 1 year in, coming up on it, right?
I mean, I've learned like 2 months in. I said something really funny. I thought I was being cute. And I was like, oh, I appreciate the work y'all do.
Yeah.
I've been in places where, they let people go over the summer because they don't really understand all the work that happens over the summer. And, and then kids didn't have what they needed when they got back. I was letting my team know I appreciate and know the work they do. How the union called me and was like, are you cutting jobs over the summer? I was like, no, I was just saying. But people don't know you. You have to also take into consideration that people say things change moves at the speed of trust. But at the end of the day, that speed of trust is determined by the extent to which you close that say-do gap. When you say you're going to do something, do it.
Yep.
Right? When you do something, people trust you. It expedites the trust.
Facts.
And so I honestly had to learn that not everybody's going to trust me at the same rate, but things still need to get done.
Okay.
So I've kind of got bridge language to build trust. I know you don't trust me. I know we're still getting to know each other. I'm still understanding context, but hey, can we please try this on? We can come back to it if it doesn't work, if it doesn't meet your need. Those are things that disarm people when you're trying to manage change and you're trying to move through change, but people don't know you like that yet.
Absolutely.
So you still give them an out, but you already know, this is going to be good. This is what we need. I'm listening to you. So those are just things that I've been learning and kind of collecting on the way in. Change management is huge for a superintendent, and I have seen many not do it well. Okay. And I've learned a lot from them about how to not do it that way.
So think about this. So now, almost 1 year in, all the advice that you were given when you were prepping for it, what would be one piece of advice that you would give aspiring supes?
I would honestly tell them, learn how to work with a board. Learn your job as a superintendent. Okay. Learn how to work, because superintendents are the chief executive officers, they're managers. A lot of folks, especially women, come up the instructional track. A few come up the operations track. Okay. Right? Not very many come from other agencies. If you're in a huge, huge city district, maybe you might, but learn how to work across constituencies. Okay. And when you have 7 different people, or 9 or 5, they're all very different people. Yes. They all have different perspectives. Yeah. And they are microcosms for your board. You may have someone who is a finance person and gets on the board, a person who's mental health, a person who's, city, politics, a mom, a dad, all different walks of a community or industry person. And they all have different reasons why they think public education needs to look so. Okay. Needs to do this, do that. And that's the perspective that they're coming at you with. And it's not a bad thing. That's why boards
It's their experience.
It's their experience. Yep. Now, you could talk about boards gone wild all you want to. That's a whole other interview. But at the end of the day, if you are an aspiring superintendent, know that your role as a superintendent is to report and work on the behalf and at the behest of your board. Because in a perfect world, they represent the people who
makes sense.
Finance and fund the district. Yeah. Right? Sense. So it's not a perfect science. It's not. Some people think we don't need school boards anymore. Some people think we need to be funded like private businesses. Whatever your pleasure, the way we are now is the way we are. And if you're going to be a superintendent in the next 10 years, I can tell you that's not changing.
Absolutely.
So you need to really know board management.
Absolutely. I want to thank you.
Yes.
You are, since we've met, really authentic, and I say that, and I don't give this lightly, you're brilliant. You know what I mean? I've had an opportunity to interact with a lot of people, and some are relatable, some are brilliant. You are both relatable and brilliant, because I think part of it is your authenticity and knowing yourself. And so definitely shout out to your parents for
Doctors,
for what they instilled is working. Thank you for your support.
Yeah.
Thank you for your friendship. And thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We want to thank you for tuning into another episode of One Door at a Time. You can catch us always on concentric.world. But I got to give a special shout out to Atlas Restaurant Group in Baltimore and across the nation. 32 open restaurants, and it's just growing every single day. Without the support, none of this could happen. So definitely shout out to Alex and his great team at Atlas Restaurant Group. We'll catch you next time. As we said, we're live from NABSE here in New Orleans. See you next time. I'm your host, David Heiber.